Now, I'm going to read you the definition. So, the definition of necromancy is the practice of communicating with the dead, often to gain insight into the future, uncover hidden knowledge, or influence events. Historically, it has been associated with rituals that summon spirits and apparitions, sometimes for divination or magical purposes. The term originates from Greek words nekros and mantia, meaning divination. Now, the art of performing medieval necromancy involved the use of magic circles. And let me say this right up front. Yes, in the Bible, this type of practice was banned, but that was over time. In the Old Testament, there's lots of um, evidence of necromancy being used in there. And we'll talk about that later. But in order to do the act of necromancy, first you have to cast a magic circle. Now, a lot of people who are familiar with magic know how to cast a circle, and that's the circle of protection. You see evidence of these circles everywhere. Anytime you see a logo with a circle, put in your mind that that's being used as a magic symbol. And whatever is being conjured through that magic um, is being energized by those of us who see the symbol. Look at the Walmart symbol. It has a star. I don't know how many.
Yeah.
That's actually a magic symbol. And that sigil you can pull magic from you. And for a while, I would walk into Walmart and get really sick. And I think it's because that type of dark magic had been um, is associated with that sigil, and it was affecting me, in that way. So it made me sick when I went in there. It also makes people act differently. If you notice that going into a Walmart, people can be rude or nice depending on what day you go on.
Right.
I think the battle that's going on between the dark and light right now, that magic is being tamed. I guess that's the best. Those sigils are being deactivated. So look at any brand you use. So just go look and see what's on it, and that'll kind of tell you where their focus is. But let me move on to the necromancy. Did you want to say anything about that?
Well, we were talking about the conjuring
Mm-hmm.
thing, and a Ouija board's the same thing. It's when you conjure something, depending on what you're trying to conjure up. A lot of people that don't have enough experience in it, they open up these doors to dark stuff a lot of times and don't know how to close it. So if you don't know how to close it, you should never open something that you don't know how to close, for one. Um, I've never messed with a Ouija board, never had
I have.
never had the act of wanting to, because
Well, little.
you're playing with something that you don't know what it holds. You know what I mean? You ask all these questions, you open up these doors. When something comes through that door and it scares you to death, what are you going to do if you don't know how to close the door? And even if you know how to close the door, how do you conjure it back into where it came from? Is my point.
And let me tell you too, like usually the spirits that come through the Ouija board when you're just sitting there playing with it are spirits who are just hanging around, and they go, "Oh, I see an opportunity. I'm gonna go over there." It can be people who have passed over. It can be
Things
that
that were already
spirits.
here.
Yes, things just hanging out, looking for opportunity. So they're so prevalent in our society, necromancy, that let me continue the definition and we'll talk more about it. So conjuring demons to enter the physical world. The demon world is not the same as our world. And in order to cross the barrier between their world and our world, they have to go through a door. And that door is usually opened by through magic. Now, we'll talk about the Bible, but did you know that in some circumstances you use special words to do the conjuring, right? Well, the conjuring repeats in succession, so you have to say the phrase or special words in succession. in order for it to work. Well, certain prayers and biblical verses have been used to conjure. And I think we need to understand, and I know my Christians right now, my Christian friends are going, Julie, what you talking about? We're going to talk about more about the Bible. And I am not bashing anybody's religion. I just want people to understand what's happening when you follow a certain religious belief and you're worshiping God or gods. Now, also required in that summoning, if you're doing necromancy, is a sacrifice. Now, sacrifice is the payment for summoning. That's how they describe it. But what I think is that sacrifices brings energy to the summoning. You cannot do magic without giving something. So I think in the movie in The Witcher, any of you Witcher fans out there, I saw the head mistress was teaching magic, and she had a flower in one hand, and she had a rock in the other hand, and she was teaching the girls how to use magic, and she wanted the rock to float. Well, some of the girls couldn't do it, and she showed her how to do it. So the flower died, and then the rock was able to float. In that example, that means you have to take energy from something to create something. That you cannot just create energy out of space like we do now. Every time we put our energy into something, it's contributing to something else. Now, in our society, we have been trained to use our energy in certain things to generate enough energy for the ones who understand what you're doing to create certain spells and magic. And that's chaos magic. So this is why I think it's important we know that we're not contributing to dark arts for people who are wanting things for us that we don't want for ourselves. We're like, how do we get in this predicament where we have mind control, we have control of our money, control of our food, control of our homes, control of everything, and that was created because we gave them the energy. We're the flower that they're killing to draw the energy off of us to create what they want.
So you're taking live energy
Mhm.
and you're giving it to something that doesn't have energy. It's the same thing with conjuring a demon.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? You can't bring it in unless you give it the energy for it to come through.
So,
Right.
and usually once you get it through, once that energy is built up where you can open the door, because that's what that's doing when you sacrifice something. It's allowing you to open the gate through
To
the
let it
magic
through.
spell to call something particular
Yeah,
through.
to let it through.
So you can even determine what you're calling through based off of your spell. So you can decide if you want a particular demon to come through. If you know the magic components that it takes to call that through, you're going to call it through.
Yeah.
If you have enough energy to call it through as well. And sometimes that means a lot of energy. So, how are you going to sacrifice enough things to have that energy to do that? And as you know, all demons and dark beings require payment. They're not just going to pop up and give you their time. Once you open that portal and you pull them through, you're forcing them to come in. Okay? You're attaching a tether to them to come into this world. And a lot of them get pissed off because you're making them do something they didn't want to do on their own. That's happened a lot.
But once you bring them in, they feed off of um, the live energy that's already here. You see what I'm saying? You're bringing them from a world where they don't have that energy, but once you bring it through that door,
Well, that's usually what they require in payment. So usually when you're doing necromancy and you're calling through a being, you're calling them through for a reason. And usually that reason is to help you do something you want to do and create something you want to create. So that being is going to have a payment. So it'll tell you what that payment is. So depending on the being and how powerful it is, it will tell you the payment. Okay, I was going to say something else and I forgot. Okay, let's talk about the Bible real quick. Okay, through Mosaic law, prescribed the death penalty to practitioners and necromancy. So if you were practicing necromancy, in Leviticus 20, verse 27, it says that eventually a Mosaic law, when Moses was here, when he brought in the laws, one of those laws was you cannot use magic. You cannot, necromancy was a big no no. And you could be killed if you got caught using it. Now, one of the examples that the Bible talks about was that when King Saul, he had the witch of Endor invoke the spirit of Samuel, a judge and a prophet, from Sheol, Sheol. And Sheol, it wasn't really hell, it was just a place where people went when they died. It was neither good or bad, it was just a waiting place that people go. Well, he wanted to know the outcome of a coming battle that he was going to have. So he asked this witch to do that. However, the witch was shocked at the presence of a familiar spirit in the image of Samuel. For in 1 Samuel 28:7 states, "Behold, there's a woman that had a familiar spirit at Endor, and when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out in a loud voice. And the familiar spirit questioned his reawakening, asking as if he was Samuel the prophet, 'Why hast thou disquieted me?' Saul died the next day in combat in that battle, by the way. And according to Chronicles, it was says he died due to the prohibition against necromancy, that Moses had set the law, and it was the death penalty. But what I really want you to understand too is that when Samuel was called through a portal, invoked through the portal, he asked, "Why are you calling me?" And that's the same thing any spirit would do. He didn't voluntarily go there. You pulled him there. She pulled him there for a particular reason. Now, I didn't bring it up, but we're going to get into more detail on our what I just set up. I can't even remember what it's called. We're going to have special um, videos and classes on King Solomon and the magic that King Solomon was using, and other related things in history that we can't really get into detail here, but for now, just temporarily, we will touch on them. But some of the stuff is so dark that this isn't the place to talk about it.
So the reason why we decided to do this podcast today on this subject is because I know when we started out, we started talking about conjuring and necromancy and all that stuff. But when you get down to it, and we're going to go into it in this podcast about witches and stuff like that. But the main reason why we're doing it is because way back in the day, past the Salem witch trials and all of that, these women were called witches, but they were actually healers. A lot of them were healers. A lot of them were medicine women. You had your shaman, and over the times they turned something good into evil, into something evil is what they did. So that is what the podcast is about today. I just wanted to explain that because it's not about just conjuring up demons. We're trying to get back to when this all started, when
a dark infiltrated into
the good, you know, like into the medicine women back in the day that were healing with herbs and all the natural stuff, and how it turned from something that good into something so dark is what we're talking about today.
So, and I promise you that medicine women, shamans, healers, priestesses, they all had knowledge on how to fight dark entities.
Right.
They knew conjuring and what it can do, but they also knew how to fight that darkness.
Right.
So it's been in our society, and it's coming to the surface, and so we're going to talk about it. And you hear everybody start talking about this. Now, one of the biggest energy drainers, I will call it, that use your energy to feed these dark spells and conjure what they want is mainstream media. Now, even some other medias, like on YouTube and stuff, now they're even setting up things on that. There's other people pulling your energy and trying to drain that energy from you through the portal of the computer or your phone. Those are portals, y'all. They can just as easily pull your energy through that to use for conjuring, just as if you were standing there in a circle.
It's an energy on a frequency, is what it is.
So, we're going to talk about the Salem witch trials. Now, before we do that, I want to show you a picture. So, this is a picture, not that one, this one. Okay, this is a picture of the Paris catacombs. Now, there are many catacombs all over the world, and I always ask myself why. What is the purpose of this? Look at this picture. They have skulls and bones stacked and stacked and stacked on top of each other. Now, the reported reason they did this in history was because they didn't have enough places to bury people. So they just kind of piled up all the bones and stuff in one place. Now, if you understand conjuring and magic, the reason that necromancy became such a forbidden thing is because you can also use the stored information in the bones of people to cast spells. Now, in the Bible, Saint John the prophet, he was decapitated per one of the queens, and y'all probably know better than I. But anyway, she wanted his head, so they did. They cut off his head and they brought it to her. If people think she just wanted the head as a souvenir, I don't know what to tell them. She wanted his head because he had knowledge that she wanted for it. So she used his skull, to tap into that celestial knowledge that he had that she did not have as a dark being. And these places, I'm going to show you another one. Like, I can't believe, like, look at this one. This is another crypt. I think this one's in Rome. And they even have full bodies of monks. You see them hanging on the walls here? Now, even saints, like if they were to assign someone as a saint, they saved their bodies and preserved their bodies. And there's a reason they did that. That's because so they can tap into the knowledge held in the bones of these people when they lived. Our bones are crystals. We need minerals and crystals to form our bones. So our bones and skull and things like that, our bones in the skull, they store the same thing. They store the same way as crystals store information. So a person's lifetime and who they were and their experiences would be stored in their body. So these dark practitioners,
their energy is stored within their bones.
Yeah, they wanted that information.
Right.
So this is how they did it. And just think, look at all these skulls on here, just in this one little area. How much energy and information would you get off of just these bones? They called it bone, using throwing bones. You ever hear some people throw bones? Some have runes made out of bones, and they cast runes and stuff like that. And it's used as a part of divination. Now, it started becoming a problem is when it was used for evil, and it has been used to control humanity. So this is why we're sitting here talking about it today.
So you took something that was good, and just like evil, evil is a mirror to everything. Do you see what I'm saying? So you took something good and you turned it dark. And with that came, they didn't get the knowledge that they were seeking from these bones. I can tell you that. But they seem to have wanted to gain the power that wasn't theirs to begin with.
Yeah, they try to
Let's put it
steal it.
that way. Yeah.
They try to steal it. So it was bone. It's called bone conjuring. These are several references to necromancers, and this among the Jews later, it was a Jewish practice. And in the book of Deuteronomy, explicit warnings warns the Israelites against engaging in the Canaanite practice of divination from the dead. So they call it a Canaanite practice. Now, we will be getting into Cain and his children later, but it'll be on our Patreon. It will not be on YouTube because, like I said, there's certain things we can't talk about, and our Patreon, we're going to offer different things. So when we talk about dark secrets and how to expose them and things like that, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, join us on our Patreon, and that is the Quantum Feather. So find us on there. Actually, I'm putting up the first episode within the next week based off of what we're talking about right now. So another way of sacrifice and necromancy that they used was called the burnt offering. Now, why is this significant? Because in order to do necromancy, like I said, you had to have a sacrifice, right? So how would you sacrifice someone? So one of the ways sacrifice was done is the use of burnt offerings. Now, burnt offerings are a significant aspect of ancient worship practices, particularly in the Old Testament. I question the Old Testament because God, as the Bible portrays him, commanded these things. Now, the God, the creator of all that I worship, does not command murder. And I don't care how unrighteous a people are, that this is not how the creator of all works through us. The creator of all, he has his own armies. He has his own people to defend and defeat these type of things. He doesn't need a human being to go out and do, unless they have a specific calling to do that based off of him. But sacrifice, the Hebrew term for burnt offering is oah, meaning that which goes up, referring to the smoke ascending to God. Historically, figures like Abel and Noah are noted for their burnt offerings, highlighting their importance in biblical tradition. While no longer required under the New Covenant, the principles behind burnt offerings continue to teach believers about faith and commitment to God. So the stories say in the Bible that God commanded these burnt offerings. Many animals were killed and put on the altar to be worshipped. And let me show you this picture. This is the altar of a burnt offering. And what I thought was really curious is they have a place. These horns around the altar here are called horns of the altar, blood of offerings, around the edge there. Then they have different containers that would catch blood, that would catch ashes. And this was some kind of, I can't read it. It would change the levels, the height of this thing this grate where they were burning the offering. So the actual altar of burnt offering was set up in a very specific way for one, the blood to drain, two, to catch the ashes, and so that the smoke from the offering will go up into the air. And this was the reasoning according to the references that I read, that the smoke was the offering. Now, when you think about that, okay, the smoke was the offering. What's going up in smoke when you kill something? What do you think, Mish? What's going up in the smoke if you kill something? Like,
Flesh.
like
It's
what's rising up from the body in the smoke after you kill something?
I don't know.
I think it's the spirit. I think it's the soul of that being that you just killed. That we all return back to heaven, back to that place where we go by rising up out of our bodies. Even astral traveling people talk about rising up out of their bodies. So I think smoke was very significant.
But as we're getting into the sacrifice thing, I me personally, I don't think that the divine, the creator God would have created something for you to kill to sacrifice it for him. Does that make sense? Why would he create the animals? Why would he create us just for us to be sacrificed? Do you see what I'm saying?
Do you have any
Just for
phones?
us to
Do you
be
have any
killed.
phones? Ask how many people were sacrificed in the Bible. How many are killed? And we're not bashing. I'm going to say this again. We're not bashing Christianity. I love Jesus. Okay, I feel that Jesus
How
came
many
here for a
people
reason,
were sacrificed in the Bible?
and Jesus, his example of being the sacrifice, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, I want to show you another picture here.
Okay, so um, the Bible describes several incidents of human sacrifice, some performed by the Israelites and others by neighboring pagan people,
Pagans.
pagans.
Uh-huh.
However, the Bible also condemns and prohibits human sacrifice, emphasizing that God never commanded such practices. Now, that's exactly what I was just saying. God wouldn't create us just for us to be laid out on an altar and killed to be sacrificed for him. Does that make sense?
Now, even
It
they say that Job was tested. He was asked to sacrifice his son. Now, why would that be? Why would God ask you to sacrifice your child?
and it's the same thing in the Bible where it says Abraham was commanded by God to sacrifice his son Isaac, but God intervened and provided
Oh, it was
it,
Abraham. That was
it was
my book.
Abraham
Yes.
and provided a ram to be sacrificed instead. So
Something was still killed,
right, something still bled, something was still burnt, and I don't know. I just
but according to the moral of the story, according to Bible study, is that God was testing Abraham's um, worthiness to him. You know, why would God need to test that by using your child? I don't know. To me, there's something. If you feel into the energy of that, you tell me what you feel. But I don't feel like God gave us free choice. Why would He command us to do something we didn't want to do? So anyway,
So, and just
oh, go ahead.
in the book of Jeremiah, same thing. Jeremiah declares that God did not command the sacrifice of children, even though the Israelites had practiced it. So that's what I'm saying. For as we're getting into all the verses of the Bible, but I want to go back to like the Roman days. There was a switch. There was a switch there. A lot of the kings back in those days, they were trying to hold on to their power of over the people. So, like when Jesus came, we it was Easter had just passed, and we just watched the movie on Jesus. So, if you watch the movie, we watched the old movie, by the way. It wasn't the new one; it was the old one. Um, they put people. It wasn't just Jesus wasn't the first one that was put up on the cross. That is how they killed people back then. They were still alive and they nailed them to this cross. And it was because they believed in a certain way that the Romans was trying to tell you that you can only believe in this way. You weren't allowed to believe in Christianity or anything like that. So that's what they did. They sacrificed them. They put them up on a cross and let them die. Do you see what I'm saying? So getting into all of that, um, it all comes down to, even from those days, it's like, I don't want to say race, because it's not a race of color. It's a race of beliefs that has always been against each other, even from back in those days, and it's still the same way until this day today.
Like it's a prejudice over. Um, we'll talk about that a little more. Like we had this big discussion earlier about prejudice and how it has affected us as humans, and how it continues to even now, and it plays a part where one race will be the slaves and the other race will be over them, and then in the next um, time, in the next 100 years, there'll be another race taken over or another religious belief. And but we're going to talk about that in our Patreon.
But the reason why we got into this subject that we're talking about right now is because the people that are in power, this is what they're doing. They're conjuring up, um, to stay in within the power. Do you see what I'm saying?
They're using it to feed that
Right.
energy to what they want to conjure.
To pit people against people. And it's not just, and I'm trying to say, it's not just in the times that we're in. It goes way back to when life started, actually, on.
Well, at least to when evil entered
Right.
into our realm. And
It merits.
and decided that we needed to stay divided in order for it to continue to control us. So it controlled us through prejudice. It controlled us saying that one species is better than another species, one race is better than the other race.
One's above another one when we're all the same. But when you take something, going back to the medicine women and to the shaman, and when you take something good, something that somebody learned how to do to help other people, when you take something good, truly good, and then you take that and you turn it to evil, that is still the rotation of where we're at today.
Of what you're talking
Yeah.
about. So it's an inversion.
Yeah.
So I said this in another podcast that Lucifer and Lucky Lou, as some people,
We
that's how I'm
hate
refer
saying
to.
his name.
Yeah, Lucky Lou. That's what they do. They invert everything, and inversion it gives them the power because they inverted it that way, because that's how they run. But we're gonna move on with this now. This is what the Bible said when they God God said it wasn't allowed necromancy. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God hath given thee, thou shalt not learn to do according to the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire. Now, what do you think that means? Making your son and daughter to pass through the fire. I think that means sacrifice of the son or daughter. And they also forbade, or who uses divination, and that's the use of bones, and other methods that are being used to foretell things, um, as an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with family spirits, or a wizard, or necromancer. For all who do these things are abomination unto the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out before thee. Now I can understand why a lot of religious people stick to this and the way it's said in here. But let me tell you, in my understanding, that once again they've taken something and convoluted it to mean that no one is able to do this. So when the Bible first came out, I want people to remember that people could not read, so they were dictated what the Bible said. So this was a part of what I call programming. Now, when somebody has to tell you what something else says, they're telling you the meaning based off of their belief system, and it's a programming. Now, divination done in different ways, um, like we're talking necromancy. So, taking a sacrifice and the energy of something else to to create the spell work or whatever you're trying to pull that entity through the gate was forbidden. And I understand why that's forbidden to humans because one, humans don't understand what they're getting into. They don't understand what they're opening and letting into this world. But that knowledge did not go away. This knowledge was kept in the priest class. It was kept in secret societies. It was kept in dark practices. Now, they were allowed to use this power to do those things because they didn't have a moral obligation to not do them. However, they added divination, seers. Now, as we see now, a lot of people are becoming more psychic and they're able to see family members who passed over. Now, I believe, why would that be against God? Seeing a family member that passed over and you having a conversation. So I know the argument can be, oh, well, how do you know that was your family member? Because we're supposed to test the spirits and know what we're dealing with. You're supposed to intuitively feel evil. You can feel evil if it's
Right.
evil.
Exactly.
And I need to practice on that. You can't just trust everything that comes in front of you. But that doesn't make it evil if you're seeing a family member or you're seeing, some people are so psychic, they've seen spirits, incarnated spirits walking around. That doesn't make you evil. There's been a big judgment on people who have divine powers that they were born with and they come into this life with. I think the difference is how you use these powers.
We're all born with divine powers, first of all. And you're absolutely right. It is how you use them.
That power.
So um, a lot of people in this world today want the power of that the divine power has given us, that the divine God has given us. Does that make sense? So when you sit down and you conjure something and you're conjuring for yourself, for material things, for
power,
for a better job, for more money, you know what I mean? That is all things that is for yourself. You're conjuring something. So what's going to come through when you conjure that?
Well, based off your spell, because you can pull through whatever entity, but you're usually dealing with the demonic.
Right.
Yeah, when people are calling for power, they want the demonic.
And there's always a price that you pay for that power. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, if you're trying to, now you take your herbs and you do your burnt offering, like you said, and you're trying to heal something. You see what I'm saying? Then it's a totally different,
like smudging.
Yeah, it's a totally different aspect to it, you know. So,
or incense burning.
If you're out in the middle of the woods trying to bring in a demon, something's wrong with that picture. I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. And usually there's chants that go along with it. And I'm just saying, there's two totally different conjurings. If you're trying to conjure something good to help your community, that's a totally different thing. But when you're trying to bring that power in for something selfish, then that's usually what you're going to get 99% of the time. You're going to get something demonic.
Well, I'll tell you too the difference. If you have to conjure something and force it to come and help you, that is the negative aspect of it. When you call for help upon your spirit guide or one of the archangels, you just ask verbally.
Right.
That is to come help you personally. And those guides and angels, angelics, will determine if you're doing it out of bad or evil purposes. We have the right to call upon our spirit guides. God assigned them to us before we came here. Why shouldn't we be able to communicate and talk to them? And a lot of people are doing this type of thing and they're made to think they're crazy or losing their mind. They don't understand what it is. But as our abilities are coming online, we all have the abilities to communicate with our own individual guides. So we don't need to conjure them, you know.
I was just fixing to say that.
Yeah.
You don't need to sit in the middle of a pentagram
and call them
conjuring
up
something, you know what I mean?
sigils and
It's they've always been there. You
Mhm.
just you tell them what you need and you ask for guidance in it. So
And I want to say this too, and we had this happen with someone. But anytime your spirit guide, one of your spirit guides is demanding something, you need to try to understand what's going on. One, if you feel like you're being forced to do something you don't want to do, okay, there's either it's not a good spirit or you haven't been paying attention to your spirit guide because they get grumpy when you don't listen to them. Because that's true. When you have, they come in and they help you with your life's purpose. So as a hypnotherapist, the first question is, what's my life's purpose? Well, if you've been paying attention to the direction of your life and to what your guides have been guiding you to, you will find out what your life's purpose is. You don't need to ask through a hypnotherapy session. Well, anyway, so we're just saying that powers such as using talisman. I make talisman based off of the energy of the crystal that I'm working with to help people. I mean, and I've had people tell me how much it has helped them. Either I do it for protection and healing, always protection and healing. I don't make it for money. I don't make it to get somebody's husband. I don't make it to kill somebody. I create items out of love, and I want to help people heal, and I want them to be protected from dark things that they don't understand that's around them. So that intent goes right back into what we're talking about: divination, tarot cards. Using those kind of tools to communicate with spirit is not evil, but it can be evil if you don't know what you're opening the doors to, and your intent towards that
correct.
towards that gift. Okay. Now I want to talk about
Moving on.
we're going to talk about the burnt offering a little longer. So that has been used throughout history as a sacrifice to beings that we don't understand. So we mentioned the Salem witch trials. So the Salem witch trials in Salem, there the Puritan church leadership had set up a committee to judge a council to judge whether or not people were witches. Now, in Salem, 30 people actually were um, burned at the stake for being witches. But I want to tell you a little bit about how I think evil has infiltrated into our religious structures and political structures. And this is just one example. So, no, 20 people were executed, I'm sorry. 19 by hanging and one by pressing under heavy stones. So they killed them this way. Many so called witches were also burned at the stake. Now, in Europe, a far greater amount were killed. There was over 16,000 were tried being witches, and they killed 7,000 were executed. To me, this is a sacrifice for whatever the church was using them for. Um, People who were being accused of being witches were healers, like Nishi said earlier. There were shamans, medicine men, and women, and they were spiritual leaders in their community. So when I say spiritual, I don't mean these people had church and made you all come there and taught you propaganda of what they wanted you to learn. Well, now I think most of the Old Testament, a lot of it's history, and I think we should know the history of the tribes and the people who were here, but it's an incomplete history and it's a biased history based off of those books that were put together, based off the people who were writing them, and based off of the people who chose what books went in there, because there's hundreds of books that have been written that have not been put into the Bible that would have benefited humanity as a learning tool if that's what it was being used for. The specific stories and books that were placed in the Bible was to help support a certain kind of propaganda. a certain kind of teaching that a group of leaders wanted you to believe in. Now, the witch trials, a lot of past life regressions on people. They remember being burned at the stake for being a witch. Now, I think that suffering, like Buddha, when Buddha was meditating, he wanted to understand the meaning of suffering. Well, suffering can be used as a tool to help you learn and grow. But I think a lot of suffering that's been happening on this planet is to feed demonics. I mean, there's no reason a child should suffer. A child's too young to even start on their spiritual journey at that young age. And so suffering, I think, has been brought to a point where it's being done every day. It's being done in every aspect of our lives. Either it's a suffering from not having enough money, or suffering from having one parent at home and not another parent, suffering because you don't have clothes, suffering because you're being bullied in school. I mean, all these things are feeding darkness.
But if you look at our world today too, I mean, I don't think half of our world knows what a spiritual awakening is, how to follow their spiritual path. Because if that was the case, I mean, if you look at all the protests, and I'm not saying one way or the other, I don't care if you're Democrat, I don't care if you're Republican, I do not care. If you look at all the protests, you are protesting, a lot of the protests are for something else that somebody else believes in. When you yourself don't really know that is that's what your spiritual belief is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost like I'm going to follow the group. So I'm going to go out here and protest against whatever it is they protest
Well,
against.
now, if somebody says something, instead of looking into it and making sure it's true or not true, they just believe it.
Right.
So if you heard it on TV or social media, you can believe it.
Right.
You
And
know?
they put it so far into their head where, okay, they're doing this. I don't know what to say, for bad, for evil, however you want to call it. Instead of actually studying it and looking into it to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, use an example because that'll be better. Let's think of an example, like something that we've been told that has now been proven to be false, but we thought was true. So, okay, so getting. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to use the 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 jab. We have all been taught that it's going to save your life. You need to have it. It's going to protect you. Blah blah blah. But now we're finding out the true story of what was inside of those things and how we have a personal example. It's affected someone in our family, and now we're learning that. So because we were told by an individual we thought had the power to be able to tell us this, and just because they had a certain title that we were supposed to believe it.
Right. Exactly. And that's with all power in the higher up in our world today. You know what I mean? I'm not one for politics, but that's basically how it's come down to is they want you to see things their way, and it's like they get inside your head and they want you to do their dirty work. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to say it.
They control us through giving us our belief system.
Exactly. Instead of having your own belief system, instead of sitting down and spiritually thinking to yourself, is this my path? Is this the path that I'm supposed to go down? Instead of choosing that, they chose to follow the group. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? It's not your way of thinking. You're thinking what they want you to think, what they're putting into your head.
That's like in school, everybody wanted to be in the popular group, and there was a popular group, and then there were the people, the loners.
Everybody had their own cliques.
Okay,
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to be in the cliques that had some type of power. So either they were athletic, and they have some type of power because they're popular in school and the teachers let them get away with things and they got to do things other people couldn't do. Or there were the super intelligent, smart people who a lot of them were loners, but they also had their own little groups that they were in. And they were actually guided by teachers and other sources that wanted that influence over them because they were super intelligent. So there is a system set up, even in our school system, to isolate us and to break us up in groups instead of us being independent thinkers, getting along with everybody, and learning from each other. But I hope that's changing. And I'm going to try to get it
We're not making
back
this
on
world a
track.
better place right now. We're being divided. We're being, I don't know how much you can say on a podcast, but I'm trying to watch my words carefully. So um it's almost like we're being herded into where they want us to be.
So,
Does that make sense? So there, let's take the media for instance. Let me just say it. You watch the news and they say they're going to take this away from you and they're taking this away from you and they're taking that away from you. When you look at the world today, have they taken it away from you? I mean, it's still there. So then you have the fight. Okay, well, in 10 years, it's going to be my kid that they're taking it away from. Do you see what I'm saying? So they're putting this idea in your head that from 10, 20 years down the road, that it's going to be taken away from you. Times change. I mean, go back to when Jesus was born. Times have changed since then, and they're going to keep right on changing.
well, you have to go back to that black magic energy they're using.
Correct.
So if they're making you believe something, like you're going to be lacking something in the future, because they're telling you that, you're creating that with your energy.
Right.
So the group of people, the bigger the group of people who believes that one idea is going to bring that idea into fruition,
It's
into
going to
the
bring
physical.
that, and it's going to bring that energy in.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And if that energy, the more people, the stronger the energy. So if it's a bad thing that you're trying to protest
To,
against, I mean, let me go ahead and
create,
say, or
even
create,
create,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? It's going to be a bad energy. So I see a split with people today. You have the ones that follow, and then you have the ones that are sitting on the sideline thinking to themselves, they're not going to tell me what to think. They're not going to tell me what to eat. They're not going to tell me how to live. Do you see what I'm saying? They're thinking for themselves. So what I'm trying to say is you put that bad energy out there, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get you're going to get bad energy. You put good energy out in the universe, you'll get the good energy.
So back to conjuring and necromancy. So how does this connect to what we're talking about? So go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay, so I was giving some examples like the witch trials. Now, I also want to talk about, like, look all these fires that have happened, even in the past. So I said, all right, give me a list of large urban fires the past 200 years. And this is the list. The Great Chicago Fire. It tells you 100,000 people became homeless. Well, how many people died? They don't tell you how many people died. They only tell you 100,000 became homeless. Okay, San Francisco earthquake fire in 1906. Fires broke out, it says, destroying nearly 80% of the city. How many people you think died in that fire? They don't say that. Why? Because they're using these bodies as sacrifices for whatever they're doing. Also, Tokyo firebombing during World War II. Bombings caused widespread fires in Tokyo, resulting in destruction and loss of life. Never tells you how much. A great fire in Syria, I'm probably saying that wrong, I'm sorry. The fire occurred in the aftermath of a Greco-Turkish war devastating the city. If the whole city caught on fire, I promise you there was death. If there's a war going on, there's people being killed. All of these deaths, whether it's in a natural disaster or man-made disaster, a fire, a drowning, any type of disaster that's occurring, even the animals and the plants that are being engulfed in fires, that energy is being fed into something else. When you look at all the devastation that's happened just over the past 5 years, who is feeding that off that energy? Where is it going? There's a battle between dark and light. They're trying they know, both sides know that in order to create a reality, the people have to feed it. Like Misha just described, the biggest group wins. Well, the strongest group wins, I think. So if you have people who believe in we're going through the ascension. We're going through the split. We're going into a golden age.
Right.
And those people who are on that belief system, their energy strong because they're coming together as a group, and their energy is that of love, and they want to see the best for humanity. That's a stronger energy than dark. So even though you see all these fear mongering going on, like I see the asteroids are going to hit and destroy the earth. We're going through apocalypse. We do have disasters. We do have devastating things. That fear they create, just telling you those things they feed off of. Everything is set up as a game to feed off of your energy. Conjuring is the bottom line on why they want your energy. Now, a lot of people say they want your loosh to feed off of it. Yeah, a lot of beings, in order to survive, those dark beings who do not belong here, in order to survive, need loosh energy because they get high off of it. Do you think they're not already surviving in their dark world? No, they eat it like candy. It's a 5 course meal for them when they get the good stuff. So watch what you're feeding with your energy. So they're conjuring the future that they want. So I see some sides saying AI is going to take over and we're going to end up in this type of um, community and we're all going to be slaves to the AI. Then I see people say, no, we're going to have responsibility for how we use this AI, how we treat it, how we put it out. That's creating two different worlds. So as we move through this energy, remember everything you think and believe in, you're creating. So if you're believing in the world's going to end in a World War III, that's what you're lending your power to. That's what you're helping the dark side conjure. Conjuring isn't just pulling demons up through a portal. Conjuring is creating timelines that they want. And they're so desperate to create the world that they want that these massive rituals have been done right in front of us. 911 was a massive ritual. And there are other people doing a lot of good work on that. And we can talk about that in our Patreon, but I'm not going to talk about it here. I think what that created was a time loop. They thought they jumped the timeline and created a permanent timeline. I think it looped us until we got back on our right timeline. But animal, let me get back on our topic. I know. I'm like trying to go to places. And I want to say one more thing too. One of the biggest events that happened on Earth to feed a conjuring happened in Nazi Germany. And that's all I'm going to say on it. We'll talk more about that in the Patreon. But I can tell you that 1.1 million people were murdered. And when you look at that astronomical amount of energy that was used to feed one machine, you have to ask yourself why. Because I always said war was senseless. War doesn't make sense to me. Why would you want to kill somebody? I mean, what benefit does it have to us as humans? Well, it does have benefit, but not to us. It has benefit to darker powers who wish to keep control over who we are. So we're going to finish up here. Mishi, is there anything else you want to add to necromancy and and how it's being used today?
Nope, because I don't believe in
Oh, that
all
what?
that. Um, I don't want to say voodoo stuff. To me, I try to stay away from it because I know it's bad energy. Period. When you're trying to conjure something, you know what I mean? It's
But you know how they tell us you can create your own reality? They're trying to show you how to conjure your own reality, how to bring it in. So I go back to that. Know what you're creating. You have to be on the mindset where this is being created for your good. You want the highest, um, most loving timeline you can be on. We want we want to serve and help humanity at this time to break people out of a cage of the way they think. And not everything we said in here you're gonna believe. Not everything I said in here may even be true. This is based off of stuff that I looked
I
into.
believe when it first started out, conjuring and the burnt offerings and everything like that. I believe when it first started out, it didn't come to light for evil. It came to light for helping people.
What do you mean it came to light?
It when they tried to conjure something, if you look back in the days, they were trying to help people who were under demonic, um what do you call it, when
Like possession?
yeah, like possession. They tried to help with that. They tried to, even the medicine women, they weren't conjuring, they were trying to help
Okay,
people
that's what I'm saying. They were
with
not conjuring when they
right,
were
they were trying to help people, um like with disease and stuff like that. You know what, I almost want to go back to Marie Laveau, is because a lot of people look at her like
evil.
she was deep into voodoo and evil and stuff like that.
But not
That
all voodoo is evil
that
either.
is not how she was.
Not all
It
voodoo is evil.
right.
If you understand the religion and what some people, but there's a part of it that became evil.
Right.
So that's all I'm gonna say about that. Okay.
Well, that's what
So,
I'm saying.
but we believe Marie Laveau was a healer, right?
Yep.
That she came here to do good. Marie Laveau was one of those witches who could defeat evil. She knew how to fight them. She was one of those old medicine
Yep.
women, high priestess of knowledge, who brought that knowledge with her, and that's why a lot of people were afraid of her because she knew how to banish demons.
Right.
She knew how to fight the dark, and she knew how to stay safe from it. And a lot of people went to her because she did heal people, and she was a leader in her community. She's still revered to this day. People go to her grave and leave offerings, and
But over the centuries, we've had a lot of women like
like
Marie
her. Yes,
Laveau, that did good for the
for
community.
their
Yeah,
community. Yeah.
you know what I mean. And if some people along the way have just taken that and they turned it into darkness, they turned it into evil.
All witches are evil. That's they've convinced everybody. That's just like saying all women are evil.
Right.
That's just like them making us believe all women are lesser than.
Right.
It's the programming.
All witches aren't evil, and
All medicine women are good.
right. Exactly.
It's all
So
about intention.
it is.
All shamans aren't good. All shamans aren't evil. It's all about intention. A lot of shamans knew how to conjure. And they used it. Now, some of them may have been trying to get information for power. That's what I feel like. A lot of them are influenced by power. A lot of us seek that power through medicine, like mushroom journeying, like ayahuasca, like DMT. We all want that knowledge, but I know you've heard of people going crazy after attempting and undergoing those things. Like your mind has to be at a place to where it could handle whatever it is facing in those types of journeys.
But I see in our times now we're going back into that
The natural
the
medicine.
natural medicine,
Yeah.
the natural healing.
Mhm.
So let me say one last thing about conjuring. So when you're out there and you're trying to conjure something for yourself, remember this: what you put out into the universe comes back to you tenfold. So remember that. So
Yeah.
whatever you're out there doing, whether it's good or whether it's evil, just remember that.
Yeah.
I live by that statement. So
And as long as you're doing things from the heart for the uplifting of humanity, for the healing of humanity, for the better future for our families, you're doing things for the right reason. And I don't mean like killing people.
right,
Let's not get
it's
things,
right,
like.
exactly.
But anyway, we'll be putting up our first Patreon show by next Tuesday. So it's under the Quantum Feather. So go ahead and join the Quantum Feather. I haven't set up any pay rates or anything. We're going to have a free version, and then we'll have some different tiers. And one of the tiers, we're going to offer a more intense look into some of this information. It's hard to talk about because we can't share everything that we have because we know how freedom of speech has been stifled on certain platforms.
Yeah, we have to be careful what we say and um yeah, on the subjects
It's
that we
not
touch on.
it's not like our channel's making a bunch of money. We don't make no money, but it's just that they'll just cut us out because
Right.
they feel like we're not following their community standards. So we're also going to be doing at higher tiers in our Patreon. We'll be doing some group hypnotherapy sessions. So trying to delve into our past lives, and we're going to be doing intuitive readings as well. So if that's something you're interested in, just go and sign up at the Quantum Feather Patreon and look for the first episode. We're going to be putting it out next Tuesday. It won't be live. The first one won't be live, but the following ones will be live. Because the whole point is to build a community where we can interact and share knowledge. Now, even those of you who are in religions, who study religion, and you want to come and say, look, Julie, this isn't what you understand it to be. This is my point of view. Come on over. That's okay. We need to learn how to be tolerant of each other's opinions and beliefs. We need to learn how to talk to each other. Because in the future, we're becoming more telepathic. We're going to be able to read each other's energy just by sitting next to each other. We will no longer be able to lie to each other. We will know the truth of things. So let's push that along. Let's get together as a group. We can share ideas without getting angry
Or spiritual healing, spiritual awakeness. We have a community of different women that are with us that do different things. So
and you'll be meeting more about them too.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here.
And y'all have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.